It's Sunday afternoon. Nothing is wrong. The work is done, the house is quiet. No one needs anything from you. And yet your chest is tight. Your jaw is clenched. Some part of you is scanning the room for a problem that doesn't exist. Because peace, for some reason, doesn't feel like peace. It feels like the calm before something. That feeling has a name, and it isn't weakness. You've felt it before. In the 5 minutes before falling asleep. In the stillness after a good day. In a vacation you couldn't quite enjoy. A quiet, restless hum underneath the calm. Like your body is bracing for a phone call that never comes. You've told yourself it's just stress. But what if it's something deeper? An old, wordless argument still going on inside you. This isn't a flaw in you. It's a pattern with a structure. And tonight, we're going to see it clearly. There's a word for this: hypervigilance. A nervous system that stays braced for danger, even in complete safety. And it isn't rare. Across the US, the UK, and Canada, researchers describe it as a quiet epidemic, a mind that has forgotten how to stand down. Tonight, we're not going to talk you out of this feeling. We're going to understand why your own psyche built it in the first place. To understand it, we have to start with two very different men, Pete and Paul. Picture two men, each alone in bed, each hearing the same sound outside, a rustle in the bushes. Pete listens. He checks what he knows. The yard is fenced, the dog isn't barking, nothing else feels wrong. He decides it's probably a raccoon, exhales, and falls back asleep in minutes. Paul hears the same sound, but something very different happens next.
Paul hears the rustle and immediately assumes the worst.
He doesn't check the yard. He locks the door instead, lies rigid, and replays every worst-case outcome his mind can generate. His heart stays elevated long after the sound has stopped. By morning, nothing happened. But his body spent all night as if something had. Two men, one sound, two completely different nervous systems. And the difference isn't the danger outside, it's what's happening inside. Researchers call this the difference between adaptive and maladaptive responses to uncertainty. Pete evaluates the threat honestly, notices the safety cues, and lets his body stand down. Paul skips all of that. He assumes danger first, ignores every signal of safety, and never lets his nervous system complete the loop back to calm. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most of us, most nights, are closer to Paul than we'd like to admit. This isn't a modern political issue or a simple case of working too hard. It is a quiet, borderless exile. Millions of us are moving through our days looking completely normal on the outside, while carrying an invisible, vibrating emergency inside our muscles. We have built a world that rewards us for never turning off, and now we don't know how to survive the quiet. So the terrifying question isn't why you're stressed. The question is, what is your stillness trying to force you to look at? Here's what's strange though. Even when the deadline passes, even when the difficult conversation is over, even when the danger, real or imagined, has completely gone, the body often doesn't get the message. It stays braced, it stays scanning, as if some part of you doesn't trust the all clear, even when your rational mind knows it's true. That gap between knowing you're safe and feeling safe is where this whole story lives. Some researchers now question whether we've even been naming this correctly. The official term is often burnout, treated as something separate from anxiety or depression. But many clinicians argue it overlaps so heavily with depression that the boundary barely holds. Maybe what we're really looking at isn't one tidy diagnosis. Maybe it's a mind in a much older kind of conflict, and to understand that conflict, we have to go back more than a century to a Swiss psychiatrist standing in front of a very strange experiment. In the early 1900s, at the Burg Psychiatric Hospital in Zurich, a young psychiatrist named Carl Jung sat patients down and read them a list of ordinary words. Table, mother, money, death. He asked them to say the first word that came to mind, and he timed every single response with a stopwatch. What he found would change how we understand the mind that won't switch off.
Most words got instant replies,
But on certain words, patients hesitated. They stumbled. Their breathing changed. Sometimes they blushed without knowing why. Jung realized these weren't random slips. They were the fingerprints of hidden clusters of memory and emotion operating just outside conscious awareness. He called them complexes. And what he said about them next is the key to everything we feel when we try to sit still. Jung wrote something that still unsettles people today. What is not so well known, but far more important theoretically, is that complexes can have us. Not the other way around. These clusters of feeling don't just sit quietly in storage. They act like splinter personalities, small, autonomous parts of the mind, each with its own agenda, each capable of quietly steering your thoughts and reactions. Which raises an uncomfortable question. What happens to those splinter parts of you when you finally try to relax? Jung noticed something specific. When the conscious mind relaxes its grip, in quieting, in meditation, in stillness, its usual concentration weakens. And when that happens, he wrote, unconscious material streams as though through open side sluices into the field of consciousness. In plain terms, the moment you stop controlling your mind actively, the parts you've been controlling get their chance to speak. That's not a malfunction. That's the whole system working exactly as designed, which is precisely the problem.
Here's why that feels so threatening.
Your conscious sense of I, your ego, has spent your whole life building a stable identity to move through the world. It has a job, a role, a persona to maintain. So when repressed material rises during rest, the ego doesn't experience it as peace. It experiences it as an invasion. And it responds the only way it knows how, by sounding the alarm. That alarm has a name too, and most of us have been living inside it for years. This is why your worst storms don't hit when you're in the middle of a crisis. They hit the first hour of your vacation. When the conscious mind drops its defenses to rest, the gatekeeper falls asleep. And those splinter parts of your history, the ones that have been waiting in the dark, don't see an opportunity for peace. They see an open door. They don't want to destroy you. They want to speak. And they will scream through your nervous system until you listen.
Jung had a radical idea about where our psychic energy comes from.
He believed the psyche generates energy through the tension between opposites. This means every time you've forced yourself to be only the strong one, only the productive one, only the one who always has it together, you've pushed the opposite side of yourself deeper into the unconscious, your vulnerability, your fear, and your need for rest. But you cannot bury a living thing without it digging its way back to the surface.
In the psyche, as in nature, Jung wrote,
a tension of opposites creates a potential which may express itself at any time in a manifestation of energy. In a balanced life, that energy flows naturally into action, creativity, and connection. But when your conscious identity leans too far one way, for instance, when you over-identify with being productive, capable, always on, the opposite qualities in you don't disappear. They just get pushed underground. And underground energy doesn't vanish. It waits, it accumulates, and eventually it demands to be paid attention to.
Jung called this natural correction the law of compensation.
Every process that goes too far, he wrote, immediately and inevitably calls forth compensation. Your psyche is self-regulating. It doesn't like imbalance. So the more one-sided your conscious life becomes, all output, no rest, all achievement, no feeling, the more forcefully the neglected half pushes back from the unconscious, trying to restore the balance you've been avoiding. This is why the moment you finally stop moving, the pressure doesn't ease. It arrives.
When the conscious self can't adapt,
When it keeps demanding output without acknowledging the cost, Jung said the blocked energy regresses. It flows backward, activating older, more primitive layers of the psyche. Childhood memories, raw emotional needs, half-forgotten fears. That regression can feel like falling apart. But Jung didn't see it that way at all. He called it something almost nobody expects to hear about their own anxiety.
neurosis is really an attempt at self-cure, Jung wrote. Not a breakdown, an attempt at repair. Your restless, anxious energy isn't malfunctioning. It's the self-regulating psyche trying, in the only language it has left, to force you to notice what you've been ignoring. The unease you feel in stillness isn't your enemy. It's a messenger who has been knocking for a very long time. But knowing that doesn't make the knocking any quieter, because your body has its own reasons to keep the door locked.
Here's where the story turns modern. Because Jung described it a century ago through observation, neuroscience can now describe it through biology. Under chronic stress, the amygdala, your brain's alarm center, physically grows more reactive, while the prefrontal cortex, the part meant to calm it down, actually shrinks in its regulatory power. Your brain isn't imagining the alarm. It has quite literally rebuilt itself to keep sounding it. And once that architecture is in place, safety stops being something your body simply accepts.
Modern researchers describe the brain as a prediction machine.
It doesn't just react to the world, it constantly guesses what's about to happen, then compares that guess to what actually arrives. When your brain has learned over years to predict danger, it assigns that prediction enormous confidence. So when real safety shows up instead, your brain doesn't necessarily believe it. It treats the safety itself as the anomaly, which means the very stillness you're craving can register deep in your nervous system as evidence that something is wrong.
So when you sit in silence and your heart beats a little faster than expected,
Your threat-trained brain doesn't think, "I'm just resting." It thinks, "Something's wrong with my heart." A little muscle tension becomes evidence of danger. Ordinary body sensations, filtered through a brain wired for threat, get reinterpreted as warning signs. And the very act of turning inward becomes the trigger for panic. This is why some of the most well-meaning advice, "Just relax, just breathe," can backfire so badly. There's a specific version of this that researchers have named directly relaxation-induced anxiety. In clinical studies, simple techniques like progressive muscle relaxation triggered anxiety spikes in roughly 3 out of 10 people with chronic tension. Mantra meditation, which lowers mental control even further, triggered it in over half. The very tools designed to calm us can, for some nervous systems, do the opposite entirely. And that's not a personal failure to meditate correctly. It's your psyche reacting exactly the way Jung predicted it would. There's a theory that explains this beautifully. Researchers call it the contrast avoidance model. It suggests that people prone to chronic worry aren't afraid of feeling bad. They're afraid of the sudden drop from feeling good to feeling bad. So the mind does something strange but logical. It deliberately maintains a baseline hum of tension so that if something bad does happen, the fall won't feel as steep. In other words, for some part of you, staying tense isn't the problem. It's the solution to a problem you're not even consciously aware of solving. Here's the part that makes this so hard to unlearn. The strategy actually seems to work. Most worries, statistically, never come true. So when nothing bad happens, the anxious part of your mind doesn't conclude that worry was unnecessary. It concludes the worry must have worked. And so, the pattern gets reinforced, again and again. Every single time, you're spared from a disaster you were never actually facing. It's a trap built entirely out of good intentions, a bodyguard who's never once seen the enemy it's guarding against.
So here is where modern science and the century-old psychology meet completely.
Jung said, "The tension of opposites creates the energy of the psyche, and that a one-sided life eventually forces a compensating reaction from within." Neuroscience says the brain builds rigid predictions from experience and treats anything that contradicts them, even safety, as a threat to be resisted. 2 languages, 1 discovery. Your restlessness was never irrational. It was a strategy built by your history, defended by your biology, and enforced quietly every single day.
So if this pattern is so deeply built, biologically reinforced, psychologically self-protective, statistically successful, does that mean you're stuck with it? Jung didn't think so, but he also didn't believe you could think your way out of it. He believed the way through wasn't more control. It was almost the opposite of control entirely. He called it the transcendent function. And it starts with something most of us were taught to avoid. The transcendent function isn't about defeating the anxious part of you or forcing the calm part to win. It's about holding both at once, the fear and the safety, the tension and the rest, without collapsing into either. Jung believed the psyche produces its own bridges for this, symbols, images, dreams, metaphors that let the conscious and unconscious mind finally speak the same language. And this is why simply trying harder to relax so often fails. You can't out-argue a part of yourself. You can only meet it. In computational terms, researchers describe something remarkably similar. To loosen a rigid, threat-based prediction, the brain needs what's called a safe prediction error, a repeated, felt experience of staying physically relaxed while an anxious thought passes through, without acting on it, without fighting it, without needing it resolved immediately. Each time that happens, the old prediction loses a little of its grip. This isn't about silencing the alarm, it's about very slowly teaching it that it's allowed to stand down. Jung's practical answer to all of this was never think positive. It was descend. Go toward the discomfort, not away from it. Feel where the tension actually lives in the body, the tight jaw, the shallow breath, the braced shoulders. Not to fix it instantly, but to finally acknowledge what it's been trying to say for years, without being drowned out by the next task on your list. Because a feeling that finally gets acknowledged behaves very differently than a feeling that's been ignored for a decade. This is also why body-based practices matter so much here.
Not as a wellness trend, but as direct communication with the oldest, most primitive threat pathways in your brain. Slow, deliberate breathing. Releasing tension in the jaw. Simple, rhythmic movement. These don't argue with your fear, they speak to it in the only language it has ever understood. Sensation, not explanation. None of this erases the old pattern overnight. But it does something Jung would recognize immediately. It starts to restore the balance the psyche has been demanding all along.
This completely upends our cultural understanding of healing. We are taught that peace is an empty field where nothing hurts. But Jungian wholeness is something far braver. It is a crowded room where the fear and the safety are sitting at the same table, and neither one is allowed to kill the other. When you stop running from your discomfort, the energy changes form. The alarm stops being a threat and becomes raw, unshaped life. It was always about holding both halves of yourself,
the part that's tired and the part that's still guarding the door, without needing either one to win. That's not weakness. Jung would say that's the most mature act the psyche is capable of. Not conquering your anxiety, not being ruled by it either. Simply, finally, being whole enough to contain both. And once you see it this way, that quiet unease on a Sunday afternoon starts to look like something very different.
Not a malfunction to be fixed, not a flaw to be ashamed of. A message from a part of you that has been trying, in its own clumsy, exhausting way, to protect you for a very long time. It never needed to be silenced. It only ever needed to be heard. And the strange, quiet truth is this. The moment it finally feels heard, it starts, slowly, to stop shouting. You don't have to force this. You don't have to master it in a weekend, or explain it perfectly, or never feel restless again. This isn't a project you finish. It's a treaty you negotiate with yourself every single day. Jung spent a lifetime returning to these same questions. This is not a problem you solve once. It's a relationship you keep returning to, a little more honestly, a little more gently, every single time. And the only answer that works is staying right there, in the room with it. Maybe the goal is just to notice it, to say quietly to yourself, I see you. I know why you're here. You don't have to work so hard tonight. That single act of acknowledgement is often the very thing your nervous system has been waiting years to receive. Not a solution, not a technique, just recognition. And recognition, it turns out, is where every real change actually begins. This is the strange gift hidden inside Jung's century-old idea and the newest neuroscience alike. Your restlessness was never proof that something is broken in you. It was proof that something in you has been working incredibly hard for a very long time without ever being properly thanked. And that changes everything about how you might sit with the next quiet moment that comes your way. So the next time nothing is wrong and your body still braces anyway, pause there for just a moment. Not to fix it, not to perform calm, just to notice. This is an old part of me, still standing guard, still doing its job the only way it knows how. And I'm allowed to gently let it know we're safe enough for now to rest. That single quiet sentence is where the entire pattern begins, very slowly, to loosen its grip. None of this means the tension never returns. It will. That's what it means to be a self-regulating psyche, not a machine you switch off. But each time you meet it with a little more understanding instead of a little more fear, the alarm gets a little quieter, and the silence gets a little easier to sit inside. And maybe that's the real transformation Jung was pointing toward all along. Not the absence of tension, not a mind finally emptied of all its ghosts, but a psyche mature enough to hold its opposites, the fear and the safety, the shadow and the light, without needing either one to disappear. That was never weakness. Jung would say that was always wholeness, quietly waiting to be recognized. And it starts the moment you stop treating your own restlessness as the enemy and start treating it as the oldest, most devoted part of you, finally asking to be understood. You were never broken for feeling this. You were carrying something old, something protective, something that simply forgot it was allowed to rest. Now you know its name. Now you know where it came from. And the next time the silence comes and your chest tightens anyway, you'll know exactly what to do. Just listen. It's only ever been trying to reach you. And perhaps, for the first time, silence won't feel like something to survive, but somewhere you can finally come home to.